What's going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music. Today I want to talk about this compilation right here. This is Function Underground, the black and brown American rock sound. Looked at the label just to make sure that I didn't screw it up. It's a compilation from Now Again Records that sort of explores the line between funk, soul, rock music, and psychedelic rock music. It's a solid compilation, but it is definitely not without its flaws. So I kind of wanted to go through, give you what I think are some of the good points, some of the not so great points, but ultimately try to give you an idea why I think it is still worth checking out at the end of the day. So without further ado, let's get into it. So before I get started with talking about Function Underground, I want to explain something. I am a huge fan of Now Again reissues. And just to show off, I mean, I've got a decent collection. Not exactly exhaustive, but I've got a decent collection of Now Again compilations. Cold Heat, I still think, is one of the greatest deep funk compilations that you can find. Especially, it really shaped my taste when it came to looking for funk reissues and really trying to find some of the grittiest, most unproduced funk that you can find out there. And I just want to show this record off for a little bit, because with this gatefold and all the information that went into it, as you can see, giving you details about all the songs on here and showing pictures from all the bands that are featured on here, you can really get the sense that there was a lot of love that went into this that went into making this compilation. So it pains me to see something so simple as this sticker saying 1969 to 1974 in the back of the record sleeve, and the booklet saying 1972 to 1977. I feel like it's such a nitpicky thing to point out a discrepancy in the dates. But it also strikes me as part of the reason this compilation feels like it could have been so much better. And it really just feels like it doesn't have that little extra touch of love that a lot of the other stuff that has been released on Now Again. Now, it could just be me projecting my own expectations on what I expect from Now Again Records, but that little detail to me really feels like there could have been a little bit more work done with this compilation. But hey, could just be me. So part of what intrigued me about this record to begin with was exploring the line between funk and rock and roll. And guess what? Spoiler alert, it's R&B. So if I were to break these tracks down even further, you could probably say that it's made up of tracks that are either funk-twinged rock tracks or rock-twinged funk tracks. Yeah, that sounds about right. So when the guitarists on here aren't trying to sound like Jimi Hendrix, sometimes they go off into more psychedelic territory, sometimes the territory is a little bit more R&B, and sometimes, honestly, it just feels like I'm listening to a straight-up funk track. But at the end of the day, I think it's fair to say that this is still a rock compilation. And it has no shortage of highlights on it for sure. And I want to kind of break down some of my favorite tracks on here. So I gotta say, this compilation starts off with three of my favorite tracks, which are the 1984 There's a Wrinkle in Our Time, which is a track that I've actually known about for quite some time. I'm just kind of happy to have it on this compilation. The more psychedelic Purple Snow, Down by the River, and Jimmy's guitar raps with the bass, which is probably the most Jimi Hendrix sounding track on here, with just one long solo playing for the whole 2 minutes of the track, while the bass and drums are basically just trying to keep up with the guitarist as he seemingly just goes off into left field. And some other highlights include Corruption is the Thing, which is definitely one of the more rocky tracks on here, but has a fantastic drum break that kicks things off. I really like the title track that they used for this compilation, Function Underground, which has this real swampy, it still feels like a funk track, but it's got more of a rock edge to it. And that's followed by the Michael Liggins and the Super Souls Loaded Back, which also, Mike Liggins, right? Also appeared on the Cold Heat compilation with, where is it? Loaded to the Gills. Yeah, on here. And it has that same poorly recorded, swampy, sloppy funk sound that I've always really liked, but I can totally understand due to its sort of crappy production values and overall looseness why some people might not like that track. I don't know, I dig it. Without having to go through and break down every track on here, there really isn't a bad song on here. But this does sort of lead me to some of the major issues that I have with this compilation. And when it comes to the actual songs that are on here, two songs in particular are so poorly engineered and so poorly recorded that, one, I wonder why they were even included on this compilation to begin with, and two, due to their poor recorded quality, actually takes away from me being able to enjoy the music on these two tracks. Now, that in and of itself isn't a deal breaker on this compilation, but it does still leave me at the end of the day scratching my head wondering why they were included in the first place. Brace yourself, because here comes the rant portion of this little review. 4 of the songs on here have already appeared on other compilations. 1984, There's a Wrinkle in Our Time. I have it on 45 already. Mike Liggins and the Super Souls Loaded Back feels like Loaded to the Gills Part 2. Literally just the B-side of a 45 that really does not sound all that different from Loaded to the Gills, which isn't really a terrible thing because I really like Loaded to the Gills. Ebony Rhythm Band, hell, Now Again Records even put out their own compilation for the group of all their songs. Drugs Ain't Cool isn't even my favorite song on this Ebony Rhythm Band compilation. Side note, pick this up. This is fantastic. And LA Carnival was either reissued on Stone's Throw or Now Again Records, and is actually one of their earliest releases. These aren't really deal breakers, but for me, I sort of expect a little bit more from a reissue label that is really known for doing these super deep digs and really unearthing records and artists that I've never heard before. So when so much of the material that's on here is so familiar to me already, it's really kind of a letdown, and it really sort of feels like there was just an opening in the Now Again release window, and they needed to put something out, and they just sort of slapped something together. Now, it's not to say that it completely lacks any effort. I do find that, as always, Now Again's fantastic liner note books really do give you a great perspective on, one, how the compilation came about, and also give you some insight into some artists that I'm sure you will never heard of and will never hear of again. But ultimately, I can't help but feel a little disappointed by the lack of artists that I've never heard before. Which ultimately leads me to my number one complaint with this thing. It just doesn't feel as exhaustive as Now Again compilations usually are. And I'll have to use another record as an example to make my point. Let's start with Cold Heat. Now, if you notice, Cold Heat has a Volume 1 attached to it. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say at this point, Now Again Records is never going to put out a Volume 2. I'm actually okay with that. Cold Heat feels like a pretty exhaustive, comprehensive record where every song that was put on here was necessary and it doesn't feel like anything was left out on this compilation. This compilation, on the other hand, feels like it's still missing something. That if there were one more record attached to it with a set of songs, and more specifically, a set of songs that weren't already on a separate Now Again release, then this thing would probably feel a lot more comprehensive. So, like, usually the way that a Now Again compilation works is they'll take one artist and then expand it to their own compilation. Ebony Rhythm Band. On here, it feels like a lot of the stuff that had already appeared on other compilations just ended up being thrown onto here. And I, as someone who's listened to a lot of Now Again compilations and will still be buying Now Again compilations in the future, I can't help but feel a little bit let down by that. However, don't let my little rant sort of turn you off of checking this record out. Because I do realize that not everyone out there is an obsessive music nerd like myself. And if you haven't heard these tracks before, I actually do recommend that you pick this compilation up, because it's probably the easiest way to hear all these songs without having to search for every other compilation that those songs have appeared on, or looking for their own singles. So in that regard, I actually do recommend this compilation, and if I were to give this compilation a 1 out of 10 rating, I'd probably give it a check it out. So yeah, Function Underground, not Now Again's greatest reissue, but it's definitely, at the end of the day, worth your time, especially if you're a newcomer to the reissue game and Now Again records. Not my personal favorite in their catalog, but certainly not a bad record by any stretch of the imagination. And that's going to be it for me today. Let me know what you thought of this record. Have you listened to it? Am I totally off base with this? Are you happy that a lot of these returning acts showed up on this Now Again compilation? Or do you think I was right? Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that you want to see me do more compilation reviews like this in the future. As always, I will be putting the music links in the description. Go to my WordPress or Steemit blog if you want to hear the record for yourself. I'm pretty sure it's on Spotify. You can probably check it for yourself like that too. Yeah, and yeah, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully stick to this frequent upload schedule. I definitely think in the near future you're going to get another Boots on the Ground blog, and yeah, I think it should be interesting. But until then, until next week, or yeah, hopefully next week, I'll see you guys later, and thanks again for watching.